The Andy Pollin Show.
We got to go after this with everything we got, figuring they're going to come with everything they got.
I'll start off by saying I'm bored, I'm broke, and I'm back.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630 starts right now.
Well, if there was ever an opponent to get right against, it's the Dallas Cowboys, who appear to be an absolute mess right now. Lost number 5 in a row last night. Really wasn't close. It was for a little while in the first half, but then Houston pulled away, won 34-10. That is 5 straight losses for the Cowboys. They are 0-5 at home. The last time they were 0-5 at home, they won one stinking game the whole season. Went 1-15 in 1989. That stinking game was at RFK Stadium, and it cost the Redskins a chance to go to the playoffs, but yeah, Cowboys are a reeling mess right now with an obstinate 80-plus owner who will not fire himself as general manager, and it just gets worse and worse and worse. And Mike McCarthy is gone at the end of the season. I think you can count on that. With the team 3-7, he doesn't have a contract for next year. And who's going to coach the team? Is it going to be Bill Belichick? Maybe. Maybe Bill Belichick wouldn't want this mess. I don't know. But, man, this is such a role reversal. Realize the Cowboys have gone 12-5 the last 3 seasons. Now, they flamed out in the playoffs, but they've been a good regular season team. Dak Prescott's gone for the year. Now they've lost another couple of linemen last night. Who knows whether they'll be able to play against the Commanders. I mean, when's the last time you can remember Dallas coming to Washington as a 10-point underdog? Maybe in 2020 when Dak broke his ankle, and I don't even think it was that. No, that's that double-digit underdogs. Cowboys at Washington, what used to be the greatest rivalry in sports. I mean, it's crazy. It's a mess, and we'll try and unpack some of that coming up. Meantime, and I said this yesterday after Alex Ovechkin had a hat trick on Sunday, that I'm stunned with my limited knowledge, granted my limited knowledge of hockey, but I certainly did not expect what's going on now with the Capitals. Not only is Alex Ovechkin on pace to break the Wayne Gretzky record this season, he's on pace to do it early in the season, and not only is he scoring goals, he's scoring goals more than any other player in the league. He's got 15 with 2 more last night. And it just, begs the question, how good can he be? Now, there is a fly in the ointment. He left in the third period with an apparent knee injury. Not surprisingly, Spencer Carberry, the coach, didn't offer anything on that after the game, just said he's being evaluated. The only encouraging thing I can say is that if you look at Ovechkin's history, he's played through some terrible injuries. And we've often found out at the end of the season, oh, yeah, he's got to have knee surgery. He was playing hurt a good part of the year. He does not miss extended periods of time. In the 20 years he's been in the NHL, I'll bet he's never missed more than 8 or 9 straight games, if that. So keep your fingers crossed. It may be just, and it was a collision of knees. It was did not look like he bent it in the wrong direction or anything. So it may not be ligament damage. It may just be a bad bruise. They have a game coming up Thursday night. Who knows if he'll be able to play. But this has been absolutely remarkable. And, again, I thought part of this season, a big part of it, was getting the record out of the way. That it's a rebuilding team. It's a young coach in Spencer Carberry. They just slipped into the playoffs last year. This year, they hope to get a little bit better with young players, but they're trying to do 2 things at once. Take care of a franchise legend, one of the great players in the history of the game. He deserves to break the record and do it in a Capitals uniform, which he will. I'll get to more on that in a second. But also that, it wasn't really expected they'd be this good. Do you know, with their win last night, they have the second most amount of points in the NHL? They have 27 points. They're 13-4-1. Only Winnipeg has a better record at 15-3 with 30 points. They got the second best record in the NHL. Yeah, it's early in the season. It's still November. And, we're really going to find out about them once they get into March and April. I understand that. But I could not have imagined it would be this good. And this is a question that Spencer Carberry, I'm sure, is going to get many, many times over the course of the season, especially if this keeps up. How is this happening with your 39-year-old superstar?
He's been phenomenal this year. leading the charge in our team, not only from a leadership standpoint and in the locker room, but on the ice as well. In times where you need these types of games, you need guys to step up and score or make a big play, and he's continued to do that and off to a phenomenal start this year.
He is a phenomenal start. Keep your fingers crossed on the knee, but if he is able to come out of that after maybe a game or two, look out, because he's on a tear. And by scoring on Connor Ingram last night, Ingram was the 178th different goaltender he's scored on in his career, which ties a record held by Jaromir Jagr. Now, Jagr, I think, played 26 years in the NHL and is now in his 50s, and I think is still playing overseas, or was last year. But Ovechkin in his 20th year ties him for the number of goalies that he scored against. That's pretty cool. And as Tom Libero wrote last week, and this should not be overlooked about Alex Ovechkin, that he's a one-team guy. And Wayne Gretzky set the record with 4 teams: Edmonton, Los Angeles, St. Louis, and the Rangers. He never should have left Edmonton. The reason was the owner didn't want to pay him, Peter Pocklington, and in his prime, the greatest player in the history of the sport was traded in his prime to the L.A. Kings. And he never won a cup again, either with the Kings or the Blues, or finished up with the Rangers. Gordie Howe played, most of his career with the Detroit Red Wings, but he also played in the WHA with the Whalers, who came in as they had been the Houston Aeros, as a matter of fact. So he bounced a little bit. Jaromir Jagr had 766 goals with 9 different teams, including the Capitals. Brett Hull had 741 career goals with the Calgary Flames, the Blues, the Dallas Stars, the Red Wings, and the Phoenix Coyotes. So to do it with one team is impressive. And for the criticism that Ted Leonsis gets, and Livero, always calls him Transparent Ted in a snarky way. I remember when Ovechkin was coming up for a contract extension years and years ago, and Larry Brooks was writing in the New York Post, "Oh, yeah, you got to put him in New York with the Rangers. He can't be in that podunk town in Washington." And Ted stepped up, and he gave him a 13-year, $124 million extension when – it really was kind of a risky thing to do. Like, it really, that was big money for a guy who played recklessly. Nobody knew how long he was going to last, but he did it, and it proved to be the right thing. And then in 2008, he got a 5-year, $47.5 million deal. And the extension, was in 2008, and the 5-year extension on top of that was in 2021. So that's $47.5 million. So he will break the record. Probably do it this year, unless this knee injury is really serious. And he's doing it for a team, as Carberry points out here, doing great things. They had a disappointing home loss last week where they blew a 2-goal lead in the third period against Toronto, lost in overtime. But they blitzed through this Western trip 3-0.
Yeah, resiliency, competitiveness, passion, fire. Like, we just wouldn't go away, and we were back on our heels early in that hockey game, and obviously going down 1-0, but still back on our heels. And I feel like Stromer's goal sort of let the whole bench take a deep breath, relax, and then we get that second one, and it gave us a little bit more life, and then we were able to settle in. It still wasn't ideal, but given the circumstances, on the road, back-to-back, you knew it wasn't going to be a pretty win if we were going to get 2 points, and I felt like we just had to grind that out. Penalty kill was phenomenal tonight. Bailed us out in a bunch of situations, 5-on-3. The third period kill, even at 4-2, right? They score on that early power play, and we've got a whole new ball game, and they stepped up time and time again. The whole crew, penalty kill, and Chucky was a part of that too.
So the Caps are rolling. You know who's not rolling? The Dallas Cowboys. And literally, the sky is falling.
So the last game, it was the sun. This time, it's a problem with the roof. Sam and Jeff are at the stadium, but Mike Ducey's in studio with more. Mike.
Here we go, guys. It had been more than 2 years since the Cowboys played a home game with the roof open. That was about to change tonight. The roof was open during early pregame work. A game set to be played under clear skies, but then stuff started falling from the sky. Fox 4's Sam Gannon and Jeff Kolb are at the stadium. Guys, maybe you should be wearing hard hats down there. What's going on?
Yeah, we might feel more safe if that was the case. And I understand, Mike, that on social media, people might poke fun at something else falling apart for the Cowboys. But this really was a scary moment. We were both on the field and the rest of our team when this large piece of metal fluttered down from the roof and nearly hit a couple of ESPN production people here as well. At that time, the roof had opened during our 4 o'clock live shot, and we saw some other debris falling, some smaller debris. But this thing really just fluttered down and crashed hard on the ground. Really scary, close call. And now since then, Sam, they have closed the roof for the moment.
Yeah, the roof stayed closed. They played the game on time, probably not to the delight of the fans who saw the Cowboys lose to Houston 34-10. But, yeah, that's just symptomatic of what's going on with the Cowboys. And you know who's defiant about it? Why, it's good old Jerry Jones. He's got a lame duck coach. There's no doubt about it. Mike McCarthy is 3-7. He does not have a contract beyond this year. And the team looks like a mess. I mean, there's penalties all over the place. There's 12 players on the field. And, it's understandable with Jerry undermining the coach at every turn, talking about who's going to be the starting quarterback. It's now Cooper Rush with Dak out for the rest of the year. And so Jerry always talks after games. Owners usually, I think he's the only owner in the league, has to be the only owner in the league who holds a press conference after every game at the same time the coach is talking. And he was pressed a little bit last night about, this team doesn't look like it's playing for Mike McCarthy.
Do you ever see any wisdom in a change of voices in there coming from the top?
Well, I have made a change, and I've never I've made a change early on a coach with Chad Gailey, and I've always regretted that. And I've made a change during the season, and I've regretted that. And so that's the music I'm listening to.
But respectfully, some of these things haven't changed, and so does that show a respect, or that you're listening to the voices? I mean, we're still seeing 12 men on the field. We're seeing the penalties. We're seeing a lack of tackling.
What's respectful or not respectful about that? That's not being respectful or not respectful. It's not disrespect to have more guys on the field or jumping off sides or getting a late hit. That's disrespectful, or disrespect has no place in that, and I'm not taking issue with it.
Well, you can argue whether it's disrespect or just bumbling players, whatever it is, but this is not a buttoned-up team. And, Jerry's playing the old, hey, we've survived tough times before. We won one game in my first year. We didn't anticipate the record the way we're playing now. We wouldn't have anticipated that. But you've heard me tell stories until you're sick. You stay in the league long enough, you have times like this. Well, you have times like this when you're the general manager first, owner second, and you've mishandled the salary cap. The quarterback that you're paying $60 million a year isn't going to take another snap this year. And what's left of the team clearly isn't performing for the coach. It's pretty obvious. And to be 0-5 at home, I mean, think about that. That was the 89 season. That's after they traded Herschel Walker. And were at that point, I don't think nobody had gone winless up until that point. So that was the worst record at that time in NFL history. And I remember the game they won. It was a Sunday night game at RFK Stadium, and Joe Gibbs was just a little bit too loyal to Doug Williams. Doug Williams was in his last year. He had a back injury. He'd been hurt, and Gibbs put him back in because, 2 years earlier he'd had that incredible Super Bowl performance, but he clearly wasn't the same guy. And I think they only scored 3 points. I'm trying to remember. It's probably like a 16-3 score, something like it. Just an awful night. And that's the only thing that kept the Cowboys from having a winless season. Here's how things stand now. You got basically a dead coach walking in Mike McCarthy. You got a dead season walking at 3-7. And the question now is no longer about 2024. It's about 2025. And as Chris Canty railed this morning on our morning show on Sportsmanlike, it's not going to be desirable for a good coach to step into this situation for next year.
We're operating with the assumption that Mike McCarthy is not going to be the head coach in 2025. So the question is, how attractive does this job become when it becomes available? And that's the thing that everybody wants to see. Now, we heard the reports from Shefty and others that Bill Belichick will be on the list of candidates that the Dallas Cowboys are considering. But if you're Bill Belichick, based on how you've seen the Cowboys operate in the past and based on what happens the rest of the way, goes a long ways to determining whether or not you'd be even remotely interested in the job just because of how Jerry Jones is handling this situation. If you're a player in that locker room and you're listening to the owner talk about who your starting quarterback is going to be and not your head coach, why would you then respect the authority of the head coach?
You wouldn't.
Exactly. So the next head coach, why would they want to put themselves in that position, have that dynamic? It's a very odd situation in terms of how they operate in Dallas. It is not the norm across the National Football League, which is why this is a tricky spot for Jerry Jones in terms of getting his team back on track. I don't think the Dallas Cowboys are remotely close to being able to compete for a championship.
Do you think he knew that before the season? He beat Jerry Jones.
No, he said it was a surprise.
He didn't know that, and if you listened a little further in the interview, he starts talking about the X's and O's being the thing that he worries about and not the players. Well, of course.
That's the coach.
Well, of course, that's the coach, right? Jerry Jones is not going to think it's on the players. He's not going to criticize the players' effort or the players' will because he's the one that's picking the players. It all comes back to ego for one guy in Dallas, and that seemingly undermines his team achieving anything of consequence. So that's the biggest issue, and if you're a prospective head coach, what you're seeing play out in real time when things are going off the rails is giving you all the data points you need to inform whether or not this is a good job, and I'm leaning toward it not being one of the more attractive openings that we expect this hiring cycle.
Yeah, I think you're going to see a retread coming in. Now, there's some interesting rumors floating around. John Gruden recently signed a deal with Barstool. He signed it last week. Okay, that's just a media deal. Boomer Esiason, who I think is well-connected around the league, is saying that John Gruden is going to coach again. You know, John Gruden was forced out with the Raiders because of the leaked emails, likely from Dan Snyder, the emails that came out that said that there was, exchange between Bruce Allen and John Gruden, misogynistic, racist, etc. And he's also suing the league on top of everything else. And that was a fire alarm, which I guess has been turned off. We don't have to leave the building. Those things, Jerry might say, well, the hell with it. Sue me. John Gruden coaching the Cowboys, wouldn't rule it out. I mean, that's really where you got to start to look because the up-and-coming guys, yeah, they may take a shot on their first go-round, but experienced coaches, which Jerry likes to hire, like McCarthy, I don't know if they're going to take it. And as much as Bill Belichick wants to coach again, it's pretty clear he does, and needs 15 wins to pass Don Shula, he may have other offers. There may be other teams. There's going to be another hiring cycle coming up, and his name is probably going to be at the top of the list. All right, coming up, what happens if you got the right quarterback and the wrong team? We'll deal with that and what Steve Young says about it as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
If you're too young to remember what it was like to root for the Redskins with Sonny Jurgensen in the 1960s, just take a look at the Cincinnati Bengals. It's somewhat similar. Joe Burrow is having an incredible year. He's got 27 touchdown passes. He has only 4 interceptions. The Bengals have scored 297 points in their game. The only teams who have scored more are Super Bowl contenders, the Buffalo Bills, who just knocked off the Kansas City Chiefs, and the Ravens, who lead the AFC with 334 points, 297 points scored. But they have given up 296 points, which is only better than the hapless Jacksonville Jaguars, who are 2-9, and just gave up 52 points to Detroit. I mean, it's remarkable how bad the defense has been, yet Joe Burrow has been great. He's said it. It's basically wasting his best year. Joe Burrow is on his way to the Hall of Fame. He is one of those franchise guys. He's one of the few that any team would want to have. But they're throwing it away with a defense that's a sieve. And at 4-7, yeah, they could make the playoffs. Washington was 3-6 when they won the division. It was only 16 games then, so Maybe it's possible they could get to 9-7 or 10-7, but you have to run the table. I mean, that's highly unlikely. So, how do you explain this in a quarterback-driven league? A quarterback who's playing out of his mind, and a team has a losing record because they can't stop anybody. This was Steve Young yesterday on the Dan Patrick Show.
It's all the classic stuff. The game. I mean, I don't want to be like the old man, get off my yard, but I mean, the game, because of safety, they don't have as much time together. A couple OTAs, a couple of weeks of no hitting summer camp, and let's play some ball. And that's more college-like, right? And so the game has been simplified. And so, you have these kings that can do some amazing things, but there's just bad defense, penalties, big mistakes, classic football stuff that you can't get over. And the Bengals, I mean, they have a history of that, right? They just seems like they never put it all together. Now they did obviously for the Super Bowl run, but it's hard to think that you got Joe Burrow playing lights out football and you can't win. I think what you got to do is not look at Joe Burrow. You probably have to look at everyone else, including we don't do a good job of looking at the owner either in the NFL. And I think we should do more of that personally, because I think it speaks to a lot of what's happening on the field. Of course, we can't fire the owners and, the equity owners in the league who have made $500 million a year for the last 20 years in equity value. So it's not like, I'm not saying it's the owner's fault. I'm just saying when things look really weird, go to the top and then work down kind of thing.
Josh Allen running the football. I mean, we've talked about this, that if you were playing now, you'd be running more. But I think when he runs, I feel safer for him running than I do, a lot of these quarterbacks, because he's so big. But the designed runs, or are they designed runs? And how does he run maybe differently than other quarterbacks?
Well, are you a skier, Dan? I mean, skiers understand how to get to the ground. Bad skiers blow their knees out, right? Good skiers get to the ground and they know how to get to the ground. And there is a talent to it. There's a knack. I think it's natural in some people's instincts, and others can learn it. And he just has a knack of getting to the ground in a safe way, that's despite the fact that he can be acrobatic at it too. And I see that in him. Even when he's jumping over somebody, he's looking to get to the ground. Strangely, I know it sounds a little weird, and I think that they're putting in the ball in his hands out of the huddle, which is cool. But like the end of the game yesterday, I mean, that's just him winning the football game. But that is football today. He is the prototype. Patrick, prototype. Lamar, prototype. If you don't have closer, I've always said the NFL, because of rule changes and safety, it's more like the NBA. It's 3.5 quarters of whatever, and then there's who's got a closer, who's got the guys in the NBA that can go close the last couple of possessions and make it happen. And inevitably, look at Jordan Love yesterday. Look at Geno Smith yesterday. Look at with Josh Allen. I mean, the big games are being won by the guys that are sophisticated passers. You have to be that in the NFL. You have to be a sophisticated passer. You can't play without it. But you also have to be somebody who can be a closer and go make those games and make it happen. That's why Patrick Mahomes has done it for forever. And that's why that was such an epic football game yesterday. I don't know about you. It was fun to watch really good football, both even defensively, like innovation, what they were doing with protection, what they're doing with blitzes, what they were doing on offense, both coaches pouring out everything they have against each other. That was a good watch yesterday with Bills Chiefs. I loved it.
Did it change your opinion on who's the team to beat in the AFC?
Yeah. I mean, look, the Super Bowls are going to be won. I said 3-4 years ago, the Super Bowls are going to be won over the next 10 years between Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, and Patrick Mahomes. It's going to go around in a circle. Well, it hasn't gone around in a circle. It's stuck on one guy. But I still believe the same thing. Now, Lamar Jackson's going to jump in the middle of it. He's going to say, look, it's going to be now Joe Burrow can't get enough help to get it done. So Lamar Jackson's going to be one of them. So it's just going to go. Those are the guys going to win the Super Bowls, because those are the guys that can go close in the biggest games. And so, yes, you can say Josh Allen, the Bills are favorites and have proved it on the field. But again, in some ways, if they're at home and they get to skip one of the games, like those three guys are gonna have to play each other. I've always said the guy that has to play the other twice doesn't have a chance. You can't beat each other twice. You can beat each other once. And so I think that's why the Bills are favorites right now.
Well, I don't quite get that logic because they beat the Chiefs, but we'll see what happens in the rematch. And I think a lot of it could be home field, too. The Bills are a game behind. They've lost twice. The Chiefs have only lost once. Either way, it's going to be a brutally cold game. You know they're going to do that. They don't mind fans getting frostbite. So, and they'll put it on Peacock. You know, we've been, well, I guess not the AFC Championship game, but yeah, it seems inevitable that the Bills and the Chiefs will meet in the playoffs somewhere to get to the Super Bowl. The other thing that was, you may have noticed maybe anecdotally from Sunday was the awful day that kickers had. You know, that kickers that have been automatic. You know, Justin Tucker missed 2 field goals on Sunday. And he has struggled this year. They're sticking with him, and he's got a history that would suggest you don't want to mess with that because he is the most accurate kicker of all time, but has not been the most accurate recently. And there were, you know, doinks all over the place. There were missed field goals left and right in the NFL that played a factor in a variety of these games. Even with the Cowboys getting their doors blown off last night, there was a record set, though, by Brandon Aubrey, who is a remarkable story. He was a soccer player in college, didn't play football, and just, you know, took up kicking and then kicked in the not the Arena League, but whatever, the UFL, and then these one of these summer leagues, whatever it is, the defenders play, and I don't know what they call it now. I guess it's called the UFL. But he found his way to the NFL, and he's been remarkable and became, with the 53-yard field goal last night, the first kicker to have at least 10 field goals from 50-plus in consecutive seasons. Now, for a long time, you know, back in the day when guys were kicking straight on, you wouldn't even try a 50-plus field goal unless it was at the end of the half or the end of the game. You know, the 63-yarder from Tom Dempsey that stood forever, that was the last play of the game. They were going to lose to Detroit if he doesn't make it, and so what if it got blocked and returned for a touchdown? They were going to lose anyway, so there was nothing to lose, but he did kick it, and kicked it, by the way, from his own 37-yard line because the goalposts were up against the goal line. But in an era where kicking is somewhat automatic, it seems like, you know, a 50-plus field goal is nothing. Kickers had a tough day. And so yesterday, Dan Patrick asked Steve Young, who I don't understand why he hasn't been picked up by another network unless, of course, he's still being paid by ESPN, and that's the reason. But he doesn't seem to be anywhere else but the Dan Patrick Show, and is great in his analysis, and was asked about kickers and asked about, like, if you're a quarterback on the sideline, knowing the camera's going to be on you on a very crucial kick, do you go out of your way not to react to it because of, you know, the message that it would send? And this launched Young into kind of a rant about kickers.
Such an odd thing, Dan. A kicker, when he gets on the bus, you're like, who's that guy? Oh, yeah, he's our kicker. I forgot about him. Because they don't practice with you. They don't really do anything. You know, you break down the end of practice. They're not there. Every once in a while, you do some kicking in front of the whole team, and everybody's like, if he misses, I'm going to, you know, you think it is a commodity. And the kickers are getting so good, Dan, today, that a 50-yard field goal is now kind of a commodity. It's like, oh, yeah, they'll make that. So in that way, the expectations have gone even higher. And when people miss and when they lose games, there's nothing worse than being a kicker. I would never do it. They can't get paid enough to, you know, do nothing, warm up, sit around for 3 hours, then go out there and say, you know, 80,000 people just screaming in your ear ball. And now you got to drill one from 58. With a wet field, and you know, it's like, forget that job. That's like Olympic gymnastics. Run down the runway, flip, land. Oh, you took a step. Sorry, go home. We'll see you later. Take care. Good luck. That was awesome. 10 years of preparation. Sorry about that. That's not a job I want. I want to be able to throw the ball in a general vicinity of Jerry Rice and have him just go fix it all. That's what I want.
Okay. I want a yes or no answer. Are kickers football players?
Of course they're football players. In fact, the best ones. Now, look, I will tell you this. Kickers that will go clean up, or the guys that will go tackle, like, you got to play football. I love quarterbacks. Throw interception, guys running for 6, go chase it down and clean it up. That's part of the job. So, yes, they're on the field. They're making big plays, and the clutch kickers, frick that. I've just told you that's amazing. So yeah, but I want kickers to go clean it up. Like if something happened, block field goal, go clean it up. And I appreciate people that you put the pads on, you got to make a tackle, go chase it down and make it happen.
I don't want my quarterback chasing down somebody because you threw an interception.
Dan, I know, the fantasy people don't get injured and be careful. Your mom, all the moms out there, don't do anything. Come on, man. We got to play the game, bro. And you've got to clean up your mess. That's just fundamental to quarterbacking. If I see a quarterback throw an interception and guy's going for 6 and he doesn't even try, kind of a couple jogs and then says, oh, sorry. Or he could have made a tackle but runs out of bounds and trips. Bro, no.
You know how many career tackles you had?
Don't tell me
you had zero. You had 0 career tackles.
That's false. I flipped Deion Sanders after he intercepted me. I chased down some guys, and when I tackled him, all the sidelines like, damn, bro, he ran you down. Like I could run some people down.
Well, I know you could do that. I know you could run people down. I have the official NFL stats.
I have made tackles. You could win. I'm sending the clip right now. It's like I was drafted by the Dodgers. I told you I was drafted by the Dodgers.
You were not. Paulie, what do you have for me?
I have a couple things. According to footballreference.com, the official stats, you have no tackles, but I have the video, and you flipped Deion Sanders over.
Exactly. And I'm telling you, I made a tackle against the Bengals at home. I can remember them because I had to go clean up my mess, Daniel.
Okay, but when Peyton Manning would go into a fetal position after throwing a pick, you had a problem with that.
Yes, of course I did. Now, I look, I want to see the film of that because I don't think Peyton would do that. I think Peyton.
Oh, yes, he did. Yes, he did.
His instinct is to go. I can't believe that Peyton's instinct is not to go clean it up. Absolutely,
he can't. He's not athletic enough to. He can't.
I understand
he's not athletic enough.
But look. All I want is the intent. Like Tom would throw interception. You could see Tom would start and go, "I'm going to clean it," and then he'd like, "Okay, maybe not." But he would. The intent was there. The intent was there.
Could you run backwards faster than Peyton Manning could run forward?
I don't know. Peyton's they're both sneaky, but
you could run backwards faster than he could run forward.
Yeah,
right?
I'm not going to get into that one.
Deion could run faster backwards.
Yes. Yeah. Deion was faster than everybody. In fact, I would not throw it over towards him sometimes because I couldn't. You know how your eye, you get used to stuff. You get it. Like it makes sense. It's rational to the human brain. Deion would move and it's like hyperspace. Like you just all of a sudden he was in a new place. I'm like, wait, my eyeball did not figure that one out. So I quit throwing over there a little bit. It's like if I can't rationalize about where his body is and where I can throw it, then I'm just not going to touch it.
That's Steve Young yesterday on the Dan Patrick Show. It's funny about the speed. Young had it and has said many times in recent years, man, I wish I played today. The field is so much more wide open. I ran a lot when I played, but now I could really run. You know, he in high school, he went to high school in Greenwich, Connecticut. Trey Wingo was one of his classmates there. And I talked to Trey. He went to the games, and he said, Young never threw the ball. They ran all the time. Either he would hand off or he would take it himself. They ran something close to a wishbone. And he went to BYU because of the Brigham Young connection. I don't know exactly how he's related, but there's some type of connection between Steve Young and Brigham Young. And when he got there, Jim McMahon was the quarterback. Well, he wasn't going to unseat Jim McMahon. Jim McMahon was a great college quarterback and a pretty good pro quarterback. So he played safety. And it was only because they had an injury during spring practice that one of the coaches said, hey, we'd like to bring you over and have you try quarterback. And he really hadn't thrown the ball a lot. He maybe threw 3 or 4 times a game in high school. So, it wasn't, like today where guys come out of high school and they've thrown, 50 touchdown passes and, 4,000 yards and the whole thing. No, it wasn't like that at all. And one thing led to another. He became a quarterback there and became a great quarterback and a Hall of Fame quarterback and signed a deal in the USFL for $40 million when that was unheard of money. And it all happened probably because of happenstance. I think he's a good enough athlete that had he stayed with safety, he probably would have had a good career doing that. But if nobody gets hurt in spring practice? Does he make the transition to quarterback? Who knows? Crazy thing. But, Steve Young could run. All right, coming up in the next hour, what about Jayden Daniels? Is there reason for concern? Probably not, but he's not what he was in the first 6 or 7 games of the year. We'll explore that a little bit. And this deal that ESPN has with TNT, where they're going to run inside the NBA with Barkley and Shaq and Kenny and Ernie, how that came together. We'll get to that and more as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630. So after all we've been through as fans of the Redskins, Washington football team, Commanders, whatever you want to call them, we should not be kvetching about recent play from the quarterback. I mean, he's been everything we could have hoped for as fans and more. But last couple of games, not quite what he was at the beginning of the year, and against Philadelphia, well, he looked like a rookie. And the question is, with the remaining games, the 6 that are left, can he look more like he did in the first 6 than he has in the last few? We shall see. How much is an injury playing a role here? We don't know. But we're going to find out. We're going to find out against a team that looks like an absolute mess on Sunday. I don't know how much you watched last night of the Cowboys' loss at home to the Houston Texans, 34-10. Cowboys did get it, I think, to 14-7 in the first half, but then Houston blew them away, and they had more injuries. They had turnovers. They tried early on a fake punt, which Houston was ready for. They just look like an absolute mess, and Jerry Jones is defending the coach, Mike McCarthy, who the players are not playing for, clearly. Too many men on the field, too many penalties, missed assignments, just things like that. I mean, it doesn't really help your team that much to fire a coach during the season, but it does sort of, quell the fan base a little bit, I guess. And I can't remember when the Cowboys came here as 10-point underdogs. That's really stunning. I mean, there were years when one team would be bad and one team would be good, and they'd still split the 2 games. I mean, the history of these teams is really remarkable. But in recent years, Cowboys have been good. I mean, the last 3 years, they've gone 12-5. And now they've already gone 0-5 at home, and at 3-7, there's no really way to save the season. So it's a get right game, but can they get right? And there's been a lot of talk around the country and in the area, like, what's with Jayden Daniels? Jayden Daniels does not look fully healthy right now. In fact, if you missed this yesterday, I played this. Tom Pelissero of the NFL Network was on the Rich Eisen show on Friday of last week after they lost to Philadelphia. And he was, he talks to a lot of people around the league, and Pelissero said, yeah, it's pretty obvious he's not 100%.
When you suffer the type of rib injury that he has, it's something that can linger. That's definitely part of it. He's wearing something under his uniform to try to mitigate some of that. I know that he made a comment, I think, to the broadcast team about you might see me grimace when I'm throwing the football. Anytime that the quarterback's motion is being impacted by pain, that's going to certainly, affect the way that your entire offense operates. Looking at that game last night, I don't know how much you attribute to Jayden Daniels not feeling right. He certainly, has gotten hit quite a bit. He was used to getting hit at LSU. He's not taken the totally egregious ones, but those add up. It's a longer season in the NFL. You're getting hit by even bigger, stronger, faster men than you were in college. I think that, when you take a step back and look at Washington, and people are going to go, what's going on with the Commanders, and, why aren't they winning? I think that you got a little bit of, a small sample size and regression to the mean here. I don't think that, I know that if you ask people around the league, they don't look at the Washington roster as like, boy, this is one of the most talented teams in the NFL. That they won some close games. They won a game on a Hail Mary. The quarterback was covering up a lot in the early stages of the season. Beyond Terry McLaurin, they got some work to do in terms of filling out the skill spots. Certainly defensively, there's still some pieces that, Adam Peters and company over time are going to be wanting to fill in here. They punched above their weight in the early portion of the season. I don't want to say that they're coming back to earth, but this is, probably what they are, which is a good, competitive, well-coached team that is going to be disciplined. they didn't execute on some things, including that 4th and 2 last night. Now here they are on a little bit of a losing skid.
Yeah, 2 games, and how many years did we have longer losing streaks than that? And it was like, oh yeah, same old football team. But it's a little bit different now with Daniels. So as this has lingered, and Daniels has been asked about it after games, how do you feel? He says, I feel okay, even though every time he comes over to the sidelines, they put that either cold or heat pack on his ribs. It doesn't look right. But Dan Quinn, in his first question yesterday, tried to set the record straight on the health of Jayden Daniels.
Jayden is not injured right now, but we did lose valuable practice time, John, with him and his teammates when he was injured. And that's hard on all the guys. It's a really, really important part of what we do, and we don't have banked reps in years. So we're very much looking forward to getting back onto a full week and regular practice sessions with the guys. So over the last few weeks, we've had to, put that together in small bits. So that's what I think into that space. And as we're heading into this week, we're looking forward to getting a full week of our practice and, work the things that we need to.
So that is some news in that he denies that he's hurt. But on top of that, and I think this is the bigger issue, what he said is the last few weeks that they haven't been able to fully practice, and a walkthrough is not like a practice. So they've had to treat Jayden Daniels with kid gloves, and maybe that's adding up to some of the problems. Because, as we know, Daniels is a preparation freak. He comes in at 5 o'clock in the morning to watch tape. So that might be it. There's also 2 teams that are almost certainly going to be in the playoffs and are really on the come right now. The Eagles are playing great, and the Steelers are playing great. They just beat Baltimore. Especially defensively, they're playing great. They beat Baltimore kicking nothing but field goals. There's only 2 other teams that have done that this year, and that's one of them is Washington, which won that game against the Giants with 7 field goals. So, yeah, I mean, that's a factor too. But as Tom Libero writes in his column today, Daniels, as we know, played after he got hurt. Remember, he got hurt against Carolina, and Mariota came in and blew him out 40-7. Daniels came back it was questioned up until game time, played against the Bears, completed 21 of 38 passes for 326 yards. Well, 65 of that was on the Hail Mary at the end, but he looked pretty good doing that. And after that, completed 15 of 22 for 209 yards and 2 touchdowns in the 27-22 win over the Giants, which was on the road. But then if you watch the Pittsburgh game, even though they were up 10, and you could blame, I guess, some of it on the defense for not being able to close out the game and, for whatever you want to say about Johnny Newton jumping off sides and all that, he still wasn't himself. He was 17 of 34, 202 yards, no touchdowns. And then against Philadelphia, he looked like you would expect a rookie to play. 22 of 32, 191 yards, and an interception in their second straight loss, 26-18. So has he cooled off? Is he hurt? Coach says no, he's not hurt. But he's not the same as he was at the beginning of the year, which may be understandable. We thought that the league would adjust to him in some way. Now, Tom's got some quotes from Ron Jaworski, who a former ESPN analyst, and now he does work in Philadelphia on the radio. And Jaworski, and I think Jaworski is really sharp when he looks at tape. He's the one I remember when RG3 didn't play in the preseason in 2013, but insisted that he was going to start the opener. Just watching him warm up on the sidelines in a preseason game that he wasn't going to play, Jaworski said, he's not right. And he turned out to be right. A lot of people went, oh, come on, he's recovered from the knee injury. He's fine. No, Jaworski sees these things. And he says, this is what Jaworski said on the radio, the quarterback needs to be protected. And quite honestly, the last couple of weeks, he's not the same guy that I've been looking at in the early part of the season. The quick twitch out of the backfield isn't there when he's forced to run, and when he's got defenders attacking him, it's because of the injury. He says, I'm not sure the ribs or chest, but he's not been the same guy since he's been hurt, and if you put a wounded quarterback in harm's way, he's not going to perform the way he was. Jayden is the best young quarterback I've ever seen. How about that? Ron Jaworski came into the league in the 1970s, the early 1970s, so he's been around the game for 50 years. And he says, this is the best young quarterback I've seen, and he's going to be a superstar, but if you keep putting him in harm's way and he's getting hit the way he's getting hit, he's not going to be around. So, keep that in mind. I really value what Jaws says about that. As for the ebbs and flows of the season, Quinn says, hey, that's really to be expected.
There's fair that there's ebbs and flows, and I wish, Ben, that everything was linear, that it went up and you keep just kicking ass and getting better at every stop. But you do have to kind of go through these peaks and valleys a little bit to go. Honestly, I do feel I was clear with John earlier that getting some more practice reps I think will really help us, Ben. Having that where it didn't have quite the same flow for probably 4 weeks, I would say affected us. And so that's what I am looking forward to. If there's a silver lining of having a couple extra days after a short week, maybe getting back into some full practice sessions, that's an important piece for us.
Yeah, and here's something else, and I think it's real. Jayden Daniels did play 5 college seasons. He made 55 starts. The college season is now 12 games plus the bowl, which he didn't play in this past year because it didn't mean anything and he was going to be drafted. But in a 12-game season, they have 2 byes. And he has just played 11 straight games without a bye. So that thing probably is real.
Some people would have called it like the rookie wall and things like that. And I can still remember my first time coaching in the NFL. I think we got to Thanksgiving. I was just exhausted from preseason to regular season games. And you do kind of punch your way through it. I'm sure for those on the call for their first ever NFL season, it is longer than anyone's ever experienced. But we do talk about it. We do plan for, how do we push ourselves through those spots and having that recalibration to go. So it does come up. It's a real thing, and you just kind of work your way through those moments, and you usually find yourself on the other side, a little bit stronger, but it's a real thing.
Yeah, and the extra days, we'll see if that helps them, but it's going to be another 2 games before they get a bye. 2 home games, but it won't be till after the Tennessee game that they're off. Last thing from Quinn yesterday is on Marcus Lattimore, who they could really use in the secondary. I mean, you saw the end of the Philadelphia game as Jalen Hurts was tearing them apart. Now, Philadelphia's got big receivers, and they have torched Washington in the past. But they got Lattimore for a reason. Problem so far is that Lattimore has a hamstring, which has kept him out of the 2 games that he's been a part of the team. Now, they're hoping that he's going to practice this week. We'll know more, I guess, after tomorrow. But as far as, getting damaged goods, anything like that, no, Quinn said that they knew what they were getting when they made the deal.
Not surprised. No, not surprised on that, JP. We knew there was going to be some time where it wasn't, plug and play, after the trade. And so what I look for from the player to see is he working as hard as he can to do that and learning as quick as he can. And good news for us is that Marshawn's absolutely savage worker, wants to go, be as ready as you can and digging in. But we're just not going to take the chance if it's not all the way ready. And good news, we're trending in a really strong way, and we'll see what the week looks like. But we're moving in the right way, that's for sure.
You'd like to have him out there against C.D. Lamb, right? You'd like to see him play. Cowboys got a lot of injuries, and they got a couple more last night, including Zach Martin hurt his ankle. But they got Lattimore. They got Lattimore because they think they got a chance this year. Maybe not for the division, though they're going to see the Eagles again and play them here. But this is the kind of move you make in a year that you think you got a chance to do something. Maybe not win the Super Bowl, but I think they're a little bit ahead of schedule. And the acquisition of Lattimore, even though they knew his condition, it's not like they were floored when he came in with a bad hamstring. But they're looking at him for the stretch run and possible playoff games. And at 7-4, that's the kind of move that you make. They were 7-2 when they made the move, but even still, they're hoping he can get healthy for these last 6 games of the year. We move on now to the Baltimore Ravens, who playing at Pittsburgh was kind of a game, not necessarily a statement game, but the kind of game where if you're going to be the team that knocks off Kansas City this year, they had their shot in the AFC Championship game at home last year, didn't get it done, too many mistakes. You're going to have to win these kind of games. This is now that the big boys are all separating themselves out. Buffalo beat Kansas City, so they're one of the big boys. Pittsburgh, not expected really to do a whole lot this year with the 2 quarterbacks, the 2 retread quarterbacks in Russell Wilson and Justin Fields, but Wilson has stepped in for Fields, and they're playing really well. So what do we make of the two teams now? Yesterday on PTI, Tony and Mike took a look at it.
In that one, Pittsburgh prevailed 18-16, didn't score a touchdown. But to hear Lamar Jackson put it, the Ravens beat themselves, quote, absolutely, it's been that way ever since last year. We've got to find a way to fix that. That bleep is annoying, close quote. Tony, should the headline of this game be that the Steelers won or that the Ravens beat themselves?
No, the headline of this game should be that the Ravens lost. I don't know about them beating themselves. And that's for somebody else to make a judgment on. They lost this particular game. Mike, I've told you this before. I wake up every day and I turn on this network. And every single morning, I find 3 or 4 people say this. And it's for months. Lamar Jackson is the MVP again, and the Baltimore Ravens are going to win the Super Bowl. And I think to myself, really? Why? They now have 4 losses, Mike. They may as well be LSU. Lamar Jackson can't beat Pittsburgh. He's now 1-4 against Pittsburgh with, I believe, 8 interceptions in those games. He was less than 50% passing yesterday against Pittsburgh. He's a great player. He's deserved the MVP stuff that he has gotten. But he's not the MVP against Pittsburgh or Kansas City. Not in the regular season or in the playoffs. In the regular season, he's 2-8. In the playoffs, he's 2-4. That's 4-12. I'm sorry, that's on MVP. Mike, he had a great last drive. A great last drive. He could have tied the game with a 2-point conversion, but they were all over him. And as I say, I wake up every morning, I watch this network. So this morning I watched Rex Ryan say that Derrick Henry wasn't out there on the 2-point conversion. He said that was a gift. That was a gift to Pittsburgh because they know how to defend Lamar Jackson.
Tony, Lamar Jackson is never going to beat Pittsburgh if Todd Monken, his offensive coordinator, keeps taking a pile of stupid pills before every game. If you don't give the ball to Derrick Henry more than 13 times, you're not bright enough. I mean, you're a good football coach. You've ascended to this level, and then you revert to something you did the first 2 games, which you took stupid pills then too. And so you have no fourth quarter carries for Lamar Jackson. For Derrick Henry. You're not down 3 or 4 scores. You don't have to climb back in the game by throwing the ball. You're in an even game, and you're not smart enough to give the ball to that player. You're not smart enough to have him in the game at the end of it on a 2-point conversion. So if you want Lamar Jackson to run it, and I'm fine with that, half your defense is looking at and leaning toward Derrick Henry. Again, Tony, I told you I would have fired this guy 2 games into the season.
I know.
And he reverted. He's reverted to stupid against the Steelers. What in the world are we talking about?
Mike, you know that Tomlin is now 8-1 over Harbaugh in the last 9 games. And that the Steelers, this is a great little fact, the Steelers are 2-0 this year in games where they have not scored a touchdown. Where they just had field goals. The rest of the NFL in those sorts of games is 2-18. Because as you and I have discussed privately, Pittsburgh gets closer to its potential than any other team in the league. Doesn't mean they're the best team. They get closer to their potential.
With Mike Tomlin, who is going to the Hall of Fame. And one of the 2 teams that won with nothing but field goals was Washington earlier this season against the New York Giants. Now, the Ravens got a tough schedule coming up. It's going to be difficult, and we'll see what happens down the road. But that was a tough loss on Sunday, a game that they had a chance to win. And as Lamar is saying, it's just too many mistakes that are killing him. And, it's not going to happen in Baltimore where they have stability, but the fan base has been killing John Harbaugh for a long time. It's what have you done for me lately? He did win a Super Bowl. He's had a contending team every year, but, people want to change. And there's, reason to believe if you listen to the logic of like John Madden years ago, maybe the game has changed. But, Madden left after 10 years with the Raiders. And he said after 10 years, they're tired of listening to you. That's when rosters didn't turn over as much as they do now. So there's that. But, maybe it is time for a change in Baltimore. It's a great organization. They do really well in managing the players and the cap and things like that. And Derrick Henry was a great addition, and I agree with Mike. I don't know why he's only getting 18, 19 carries a game. He ought to get 25 carries a game. He's older, but, he totes the pill. And when he gets going, he's hard to stop. He did fumble early in the game, which, was a problem. They held the Steelers to a field goal off of that. But it would seem like with a defense that's as much of a sieve as they are in the secondary, they want to shorten things up and run the clock and run the football. But they don't run it enough, and that is inexcusable. In a slobber knocker kind of game that it was with Pittsburgh, no carries in the fourth quarter for Derrick Henry doesn't make a lot of sense. And offensive coordinators, I guess, get carried away with that kind of thing and make those mistakes. Coming up, 46 years ago today, we had the miracle at the Meadowlands. You know the basics. We'll give you the backstory and more as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
Rams coming up at 11 o'clock, November 19th. Of 1978, so 46 years ago today. You have heard over the years about this play if you don't remember it. It's one of the most famous plays in NFL history. New York Giants at home playing the Philadelphia Eagles, both teams trying to get to the playoffs, kind of on the edge of a brink of a season here, and it's the final minute of the game. Giants are up 17-12, and all they have to do is run out the clock. The game is over. They get the victory, and they move on. Well, here once again is the Merrill Reese call of what happened, and this was Merrill Reese in his second year of doing the Eagles on the radio. 46 years later, he is still the voice of the Eagles and called it perfectly.
Under 30 seconds left in the game. Pizarchik can just fall on the football, and there is nothing the Eagles can do. And Pizarchik fumbles the football. It's picked up by Herman Edwards. 15, 10, 5, touchdown Eagles. I don't believe it.
I don't believe it. Nobody could believe what happened. And in this day and age, it's unimaginable that a team with a 17-12 lead and the Eagles with no timeouts, no ability to stop the clock, you would just take a knee. Joe Pisarcik takes a knee. This game is long forgotten, and the Giants do what they had to do to win the game. But the unthinkable happened. There was an exchange between Joe Pisarcik and Larry Zonka that was botched. The ball came loose, and Herman Edwards, you played to win the game, who was a player then, with the Eagles long before he became a coach, picked it up and took it into the end zone, and the Eagles won the game. That's the radio call you're familiar with. You may not have heard the TV call. And Don Criqui was doing the game. I believe it was on CBS. Yeah, CBS had the NFC rights. So Don Criqui was doing the game. But see if you can identify who was doing the color. This was the TV call of the fumbled, botched, whatever you want to call it, the exchange between Joe Pisarcik and Larry Zonka on TV.
As the clock winds out on the Philadelphia Eagles, a game they thought would project them into a possible wild card position. It would bring them 7-5 had they won, but a late interception by the Giants will preserve a Giant victory. An upset win as the Giants lead 17-12, and we're inside 30 seconds. The Eagles have no timeouts. Wait a minute. Here's a free foot. I don't believe it. The Eagles pick it up, and Herman Edwards runs it in for a touchdown. An incredible development. Just like the opening game of the season when the New England Patriots were running the game out against the Washington Redskins. A fumble. This is the most astounding development. This is even more unbelievable.
Just doesn't get the snap. He just loses the snap, doesn't get it. And who's right there? Herman Edwards picks it up on the dead run and goes in for a touchdown.
That is Sonny Jurgensen, a few years before he joined Sam Huff and Frank Herzog to become Sonny, Sam, and Frank, right on this frequency, AM 630. That's where they became local legends together, but Sonny, having been out of the NFL for about 4 years at that point, was a CBS analyst. He did a bunch of games. He was kind of like Forrest Gump. He was at the he did the catch game with Vin Scully, where Joe Montana threw the touchdown pass to get the 49ers to the Super Bowl against the Cowboys. I mean, Sonny was everywhere on TV, but he was there for that. He did the miracle at the Meadowlands, and that was his voice at the end. Now, how does this happen? It's unimaginable that now it's automatic when you're in that situation, the quarterback takes a knee. Why was there a handoff in the first place? Well, the rules were a little bit different in 1978. It wasn't until 1987, 9 years later, that a quarterback could essentially give himself up by taking a knee. So what would happen in those situations is the quarterback would take the snap and then fall down and cradle the ball, but it didn't stop the defense from hitting him. You know, that was legal in those days. Pisarcik had a bit of a knee issue, and there was concern with the offensive coordinator. His name, by the way, was Bob Gibson, and Bob Gibson called the plays from the press box, as some offensive coordinators do. But, he called down to, the sidelines. They didn't have headsets in those days, but the signal came in that he was supposed to hand off to Larry Zonka. And Zonka says in the huddle, "Don't give me the ball." But Pisarcik wanted to be a good soldier, wanted to carry through on that. And so rather than, get clobbered when he would fall on the ball, he followed orders and he gave Larry Zonka the football. Marion Campbell, who was the defensive coordinator of the Eagles. Dick Vermeil was the head coach, and Campbell, who later replaced him as head coach, was the defensive coordinator. He called for an 11-man blitz, and he didn't care whether he was going to take a knee or fall on the ball or whatever. He was going to try and knock it loose. And sure enough, because there was confusion, because Zonka didn't want the ball, because of the way the snap came, it just never got off, and the ball's bouncing around. Edwards picks it up, takes it in for a touchdown. So there was that. Now, immediately after the game, that was the end of Bob Gibson. He never coached in the NFL again. And John McVay, who was the coach of the Giants, was fired and never was a head coach again. It was a part of a period of time that was just awful for the Giants because there was an ownership feud. Wellington Mara, who later became the principal owner of the Giants, was sharing the team with his nephew, Timothy Mara. Wellington Mara's father had, in his will, said it would go to his son and his nephew, and each of them would have a stake in the team. That was after Jack Mara's death in 1965. Well, they weren't speaking to each other, and it was so bad that they had adjoining owners' boxes at the stadium, and they had to put a curtain up in between them so they couldn't even look at each other. And this game ultimately led to changes for the Giants, and they hired, at the advice of Pete Rozelle, George Young, to get things back on track. And George Young built the team, and he was the one that ultimately hired Bill Parcells, and the rest of it is history. But there is a story behind the story. Beasley Reese of the Giants was not on the field at the time. He was a defensive back for the Giants. But just last year, he told this story, which he says has never been told before, about what happened in the aftermath after the Herman Edwards return of the fumble for a touchdown.
So we were winning the game, and they had Larry Zonka in the backfield, and Joe Pisarcik was the quarterback, and the coach called a running play with only a few seconds left in the game. And so Larry Zonka, he said, "Are you crazy? Don't call that play. Just take a knee, Joe. Joe, take a knee." Joe was a new starter and was arguing with him, saying, "No, man, he called the play. If I don't run the play that he calls, all hell's going to..." So they're arguing as they go up to the center. They snap the ball, and Joe kind of half kneels and half hands off. He's going to see what Zonka does. Zonka kind of half runs the play, but half expects, and the fumble happened. Herman Edwards picked up the ball and ran it in for a touchdown. Here's the part that people don't know. We went into the locker room, and literally, the defensive lineman started beating up members of the offense.
Well, I'd like to hear more on that. I've never heard that over the years. Nobody really saw, I guess, bloodied offensive players on that, and it wasn't their fault. They got a call from the coach who got fired to run the football. But there were some, extenuating circumstances, not to let Bob Gibson, not that Bob Gibson, but the football Bob Gibson off the hook on this. But it wasn't in those days like it is today. Once you take a knee and give yourself up, the play is over. And so I guess to protect Joe Pisarcik, they called the handoff, which will forever go down in football lore as one of the dumbest things ever seen on a football field. It cost the Giants the game. They didn't make the playoffs. The Eagles, They went on sort of a march after that. They became a good team, and after the 1980 season, they went to the Super Bowl. And in many ways, that sort of propelled them. And also keep in mind, if the other team doesn't have any timeouts and you want to run out the clock, you take a knee. You don't try and hand off to Larry Zonka. And Joe Pisarcik will be forever remembered for that. And what would have been a run-of-the-mill NFC East game is not forgotten 46 years to the day later. Just amazing. All right, that's going to wrap it for me. Bram is coming up next, and I'll see you back here tomorrow morning at 9 a.m.